Mick Fealty. I'm founding editor of Slugger O'Toole, and welcome to the Slugger Cato project, episode 2. Now, the response to our first video in this project series was almost universally warm and welcoming, and that's not something we get to say or even witness on Slugger very often. Typical was Babyface, a long-term commenter who wrote, "This is a useful counter to the relentless Stormont is dysfunctional, a clown show, not fit for purpose, blah, blah, blah." And he goes on to write, "Stormont is what we have for now, and so we should encourage any positive work actually being done, even if it's not as much fun slagging everything off." Now, in terms of the centrepiece of the first episode, the Paul Frew interview, mainland Ulsterman had this to say. "I was quite impressed with his defence of the role of the Stormont backbencher and his commitment to the hard work of considering policy, scrutinising and trying to win people from other parties over to shared initiatives." Now, I think this is a really important point worth lingering on a little bit, because I think it tells us something really useful about why putting political opponents under the same legislative roof is an important social benefit. Not least because it then encourages them to find shared legislative, if not always shared political ground. Of course, this would not be Slugger if there was no space for humour. So Riley, Terraformer, writes of the title of the project, "I assumed it was referring to Cato from the Pink Panther series, recalling the comic genius of the late, great Bert Quack, Peter Sellers' Marshall manservant from that film series." Another commenter, Paul, is a former clerk in the Assembly, and he noted, "It's frustrating to see all the media focus being on ministers and Assembly chamber spats, occasionally in the committees as well. Ultimately, I suppose good, honest endeavour doesn't bring in the clicks that a juicy falling out will." Elsewhere, John McL, and that's L, as in the letter, notes, "I still believe that politics is entering a phase of ungovernability where things either don't get done or events move too fast in real time for effective, principled and consistent leadership. But this doesn't mean that there aren't good people in politics, and the more of them we have, the better a chance we stand." Well, amen to that, John. This is exactly the kind of thing we're trying to encourage with the Slugger Cato project. We still have some gaps to fill, by the way, not least amongst councillors who sit a little bit further back from Stormont Hill and are likely to be more tuned into local opinion on the blocks that ordinary people face on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to ask at the end, if you've got any suggestions, please email me on the address I'm about to give. So this week, a British Council report noted that younger people who are much more globally engaged than much of us oldies were at their age, are becoming disenchanted with democracy per se, not simply in Northern Ireland, but even more generally. The report says that they look to China in particular as an authoritarian country where nonetheless the country has managed to change itself as much in one generation as it took the Republic 3 and maybe even 4 to realise. That's perhaps because our democracies are getting bogged down in faction fights and not doing the jobs they were elected to. So as a reminder, the Slugger Cato project wants to inspire and yes, even demand rebelliousness, independence, honesty and courage, most of all courage, I think, from our backbenchers, not as some kind of moral virtue signalling, but as an essential tool to challenge and fix a floundering government system. Now, if you know of an MLA or a councillor who fits this bill, drop me a line at editor@sluggerotoole.com. Now, let's hear from our next witness, the SDLP's MLA for Mid-Ulster, Patsy McGlone.
Well, first get into politics. Well, politics would have been in and around our family and would have been discussed, particularly on my mother's side of the family, very political. But first got into politics when I decided, right, okay, SDLP was about. I saw John Hume, I saw Seamus Mullen. We said, I want to join that party. So I contacted a local man, Henry Walls, who put me in touch with Roddy Gribben, the local councillor, very prominent member of the GAA and well-known figure too. And Roddy got me signed up as a member. So from there, like most organisations, you're invited along to a meeting before you know you're branch secretary, before you know you're on the district executive, before you know that you're in the party executive, and so it goes until someone decides, here, would you be interested in standing for an election? There's a council election coming up. So it's one of those things that sort of a bit of a natural progression. That would have been in the, let's see, probably around about 1986, I would think, around about that period of time. Because I still believe in the aims and ideals of the party, and that's an agreed United Ireland, and also a party which is centre-left, in other words, there to help people whenever they need support, whether that's support to establish a business or to support with whatever that might be in their walk of life to make things better for them, or it could be someone who's fallen into difficulties to help them with social security or to help them with health or education issues. I still support that aim of making society better for people. Well, probably as an overall issue, being there for people in some very, very difficult circumstances. There have been other things like there have been inquiries and the likes of being on the Public Accounts Committee where a senior civil servant was demoted after having basically misled a Public Accounts Committee, which is the scrutiny committee of the Assembly. And there were a series of people who were dismissed from the Board of NI Water, right? How that was done without, it was supposed to have been done in an impartial and fair way. And as we explored deeper into the methodology of how that was done by the department, by NI Water, we discovered there was all sorts of relationships, all sorts of things that hadn't been disclosed, all sorts of people who were presented as independent who weren't necessarily as independent as they possibly could have been. And at the end of it all, you had a permanent secretary who told lies and was caught out on those lies. So for me, it was a good lesson as to how to do things in terms of how you would actually explore a situation, how you would investigate a situation. Interrogate maybe up to a point is another word that you could use, but it also taught me that while most public servants are good, dedicated people to their jobs, it does no harm to ask, if you're at all doubtful or dubious about the answer you're getting, to ask the second, third or fourth question to get to the bottom of what it is, because you're there, you're elected to be there to act in the public good. Clearly there were people in the public sector who didn't have that uppermost and who were trying to bluff or fool or to play stupid games with other people's lives, and it involved public money. So I was there, as I felt, doing my job, asking the questions which were right and proper, and to be honest, in a number of cases we were getting proper bull from people, but that was exposed, and they were exposed as coming along and just telling lies. A very senior civil servant was demoted as a consequence of that. It led to a civil service inquiry into how he in that case had behaved, how he had misled people, and indeed how he had written letters for others threatening legal action against 3 members of the Public Accounts Committee, my late good friend John Dallett, Don Purvis and myself, where he shouldn't have intervened in that at all and should have known better than to do so. So these things were all going around the place, and the whole purpose of it was to avoid the truth being exposed, which it eventually was. And the lesson that should have been learned for others maybe around the place was the truth will eventually out. Someone somewhere will expose the truth. It's for us as public servants to make sure that we're asking the right questions, and the advice that I would give to doesn't matter what level of elected representative it is, don't be reluctant to ask the second or third question if you feel there's something out of place. Well, there's couple of levels. Number one is that, like everything else, experience does count, and it teaches the lessons again for other committees and other experiences that I've had on different committees about just drilling down that bit deeper into issues. I can think of a number of issues around that. Some of them are quite complex and it would take quite a while to explain them here. But if I and others hadn't been sufficiently concerned to drill down into those issues, it would have cost the public in Northern Ireland here hundreds of millions of pounds. There will be instances where, and I've seen this too, where civil servants have still thought that they're the permanent government, right? I saw it at that particular time where, during the NI Water thing, where the permanent secretary thought he was even a deity, you know, within the department and within the government here. So, yes, I've seen that, but the job of any good minister and his or her special advisor is to repeatedly challenge the advice that you've been given. And indeed recently, I saw in the Assembly where one of my own party colleagues was questioning a minister about an issue, and it was quite obviously clear that the minister did not know what that issue was and should have been across it. Now, that's not the minister's fault, because a couple of us saw the civil servants then urgently scribbling a note up to the minister about this issue, but the minister should have been very clearly aware of that, because it was a significant health issue, and clearly he hadn't been informed of it. Now, that's due to either ineptitude on the part of the civil service, or maybe some other reason in that they didn't want the minister informed of that, and they should have had him informed of it. Now, that is because of some good-willed, public-spirited citizen had approached one of our members and informed him of the issue. Now, the only other aspect I would say is there are some exceptional civil servants who are ahead of the pack, and usually they get promoted and they don't stay too long in one place, and before you know it, they're maybe away to another department or whatever. And that can be an unfortunate thing, because then two things happen. Either you're maybe left with people who aren't as inspirational in their thinking, or someone else new comes in and they have to learn the whole brief all over again. I think that's something that has to be addressed by the civil service. Also, they could learn a hell of a lot from the Irish government around the quality, the qualifications, the promotion of civil servants, and in the Irish government they have some of the top-notch people working for them, and you can see that in departments. You can also see it at diplomatic level in different embassies right across, intellectually bright, head of the pack, doing a brilliant job. And that's why Ireland has such a prestigious place on the world stage. They have some of the brightest and top people working for them. And therefore, we have to encourage the civil service to become that sort of a place, rather than someone just getting promoted because they've stuck it in for a while. They've been about the place long enough for someone to say, well, we're going to have to promote him or her. Oh, yes. People do, because the phone hops, the emails come. I can assure you, whenever there's a bit of topical legislation coming up in Stormont or going through committees, I'm presently on the Agriculture, Environment, Rural Affairs Committee, where the Nutrients Action Programme being introduced by the Minister has become a hot burning topic. The Nutrients Action Programme, basically that's to reduce the number of nutrients. We have a major problem in Lough Neagh with nutrients going into the loch. It's causing, along with climate change and zebra mussels, it's just a toxic mix. It's causing the blue-green algae to arise in the loch, which is it's causing further problems in that the fish aren't getting their proper food, and so the ecology of the loch's affected, aside from the fact that 40% of our water for human and animal consumption is taken from that loch. So therefore, we have to arrive at a situation where nutrients are reduced. Similar situation has been faced in the south, but what they've done there is, instead of introducing a series of measures which say to farmers, you're going to have to stop doing this, you're going to have to use different types of spreading slurry, you're going to have to have rules to abide by, right, left and centre. What the Irish government did, they said, yes, you have to do that, but we're going to incentivise you to do that with environmental schemes, grants for environmental schemes, grants for equipment, new equipment which you can buy, which changes the usages that you have on farm and reduce the flow of phosphates and nitrates under water courses and ultimately into the lakes, where that's the mix for the blue-green algae. So that has created a lot of genuine concern among farming communities that it, along with a number of other issues such as inheritance tax and indeed the pressures of TB among the animal flock, the animal herds, is really causing a lot of pressure in many farming families. So you have that, and all that is scrutinised through the committees. But I'll give you another very practical example, a very sad and practical example. We had a child knocked down stepping off a school bus just outside Castledawson a few months back there. That, as of itself, and our local councillors, two of our local councillors in particular, have been very vigorous in working with families who have had, in this instance, lost a daughter, or in other instances of children severely injured stepping off a school bus. So we, the SDLP, the opposition, have a motion coming before the Assembly on Monday, this Monday coming, and that's about to introduce new measures, legislative measures, to ensure that proper processes are followed whenever children are in particular exiting or are getting on a school bus. And that would be like in other countries where cars must stop to allow that to happen. Now, that's a very real issue. Unfortunately, the catalyst for it was the death of a child. But if that does lead to new laws being introduced that do save the lives of other children, I'm not saying that that'll be a good thing. It's probably overdue, but it'll be something that would be of interest in safeguarding the lives of other children. So that's practical measures, how in a legislative way you can raise an issue, then the minister's held to account for that, and the minister will have to give account as to what measures, in this case, she is doing to introduce that type of legislation. Well, the first point I would make, and this is based on experience, is that I've never seen it as a job. It's more a vocation. A job implies that you're working 9 to 5. Anybody who's doing their job right as a public representative will know it's certainly not 9 to 5, and you could be on call at any time of the day or night. In some instances, now I've outlined some instances that has been very urgent cases. Some instances indeed, thankfully, not a regular event, but some instances life or death situations that you can be called into because you're the first port of call. It might be over a weekend, it could be late at night, you're the first port of call, and people may turn to you because they know you, they know that you might know who to turn to get help in a very difficult situation. And there are other instances you just, Seamus Mallon said the first rule of politics was be there, and that has stuck with me, and so far as I humanly can do, right throughout my time as an elected representative, which was 32 years just past Saturday there. So it's quite a while, and you're still learning and you're still helping people, and as long as your motivating factor is to see a bad situation or a difficult situation made much better through your support or your help or your intervention, that if you stick by that, you'll never go too far wrong as a public representative. In that situation, these are the issues that I mentioned around the nutrient section programme. That's proposed. So therefore, the job could be to amend them legislatively in the Assembly, or it could be to advocate and champion for the support measures that I've just mentioned, whether that support is part of a package of financial incentives and advice to go with it about, say, new farming methods or whatever that might be. That's as I see my job, because I see what the deficiencies are. I listen very carefully to what people in the farming and rural communities are telling me, because I live in a farm and rural community. I live out in the country. I'd just have to be completely stupid not to be listening to what my neighbours, family and friends are telling me. As a public representative, that would be mighty stupid, and it would be a dereliction of duty too. The very people that support you, the very people that election after election have voted, in my case, me in, it'd be really stupid not to listen to those people. So I do listen to them, and the advice, I do take it on board, because it's coming from an instance of a lot of well-informed, practical, pragmatic, good people who know how things work. And that's important too. That another element I should say is, and this should apply in all walks of life, if you don't know, find out. Don't go off half-cocked, because if you go off half-cocked about a thing, you're only going to trip yourself up. Well, the first thing I would say is stay people-focused. And by staying people-focused, listen to what people are saying to you, because quite often you get the impression that public representatives are there just to sound off. And if you're not listening, you're not coming from the right place. Because if you're not listening, you're not hearing things correctly as they are, and you're not motivated for the right reason. And back to that motivation, you must be people-centric, motivated, and you must be motivated by a desire, a passionate desire to make a change in people's lives for the better, at whatever level that might apply. And the other final thing, I've already said it earlier, is don't be coming into politics thinking this is just another job. To emphasise that point, it is a vocation, a community vocation, where you're placed in a responsible position to help people, some often in very difficult circumstances, round the corner. And back to the original point of what the late great Seamus Mallon said, first rule of politics is to be there. And that being there applies at different levels, be in Parliament, be in the Assembly, and being there could be a late night with someone trying to help them through distressing situations that they have. That's your role, that's your responsibility, that's your duty.